Hello AmericansChannel. This video is made by free videos from Storyblocks, and these images and video we use just for explanation, and it's free use also.
A calm stroll through the park turned into a nerve-wracking experience for this mother and her daughter. It started when they spotted a homeless man resting on a park bench. He looked hungry, so they gave the man their sandwich, not knowing that this action would make him knock on their door the next day. Mom and daughter give sandwich to homeless man, not knowing he would later knock on their door. It was 5-year-old Katie who started this bizarre chain of events. She was the one who saw the homeless man and asked her mother if she could give him her sandwich. It was an odd request, but Emma knew her daughter to be kind like that, an action she would soon come to regret approving. Katie was incredibly smart, way past her classmates' social and intellectual capabilities, so this high-level act of empathy toward a stranger was not surprising to her mother. Her little girl approached the man and presented him with her lunch, a large sandwich of which she only required half for herself. Emma watched the beginning of their interaction with a smile as she witnessed how the homeless man acted grateful toward Katie's gift. Her daughter and the man had a short conversation after that. Emma trusted her daughter, so she used this time to check her work mail before urging Katie to move along. The funny thing is that if Emma had paid closer attention to their final interaction instead of checking her mail, all the following drama could have been avoided. Katie was a smart girl and wouldn't get herself into trouble, but her mother missed this crucial moment. So, now she was in the dark. They needed to go home, but did so with a sense of pride. "You did a good thing today, honey." That man was very thankful. Katie looked up to her mother and nodded. When Emma entered their home, she thought that was the end of it, not knowing that it was only the beginning. The next day, something happened that Emma could only describe as one of the most horrifying days of her life. She and her daughter had just come home from the supermarket when somebody suddenly started knocking loudly on their door. The knocks started slow but quickly increased in volume and rhythm. "Who could it be?" Emma said as she stepped away from the kitchen counter. She figured it must have been her neighbor or something, because postal workers never made their rounds on Sundays, and she wasn't expecting anyone. Emma opened the door, unaware and smiling, but that smile instantly faded. The homeless man from the day before suddenly stood on her doorstep. The rugged man looked into Emma's eyes as Emma froze in her place due to sheer shock. After that, there was a moment of silence, but just seconds later, Emma started screaming from the top of her lungs. It was clear that the homeless man wanted to speak. He opened his mouth and reached into the inner pocket of his jacket, but Emma didn't want to find out what the man was grabbing. Before he could make his next move, Emma threw the door in his face and ran toward her daughter's room. Her loud footsteps made it up the stairs in record time as Emma opened the door to her daughter's chamber with a wild swing. Katie also heard the knocks and sat curiously on the edge of her bed. Emma instinctively grabbed her daughter. "What the hell? What does he want? How did he find us?" The door knocking continued for at least 5 minutes, and with every sound Emma heard, she became more fearful. The worried mother squeezed her daughter tightly toward her chest as they sat on the ground in the far corner of Katie's room. On the other hand, Katie didn't understand her mother's worries much. "We not letting him in. We helped him yesterday. What changed?" Emma ignored her daughter's argument because she was the responsible adult in this situation. So, together with her little girl, she waited out the storm until the knocking stopped. And this decision was Emma's second vital mistake because there was something about this homeless man that Katie knew and her mother didn't. It was the reason why he arrived at their house and the reason why all the stuff that would happen in the future would come to pass. But Emma's parently panic wouldn't allow her daughter to speak. This parental worry also instantly criminalized this man's character and behavior, while the truth was far more complex. He had a reason for being at their house that was not malicious at all. Emma would have understood if she had bothered to let her daughter speak or let the homeless man get a word in. After 30 minutes of silence, Emma finally dared to pull herself and her precious baby girl off the ground. She ordered Katie to stay in her room, though. "I will check downstairs. Wait here until I say it's safe." Emma walked down the stairs and carefully checked the narrow windows next to the front door. The homeless man appeared to have turned around and disappeared, which pleased Emma greatly. It allowed her to take a breath because it meant safety for her and her daughter. But when Emma did a final check of the ground floor and reached her kitchen, she was instantly scared again. The homeless man had left the area at the front of Emma's house but was now walking in her back garden. She saw him waving at her from her kitchen window, a scary sight to say the least. "Stay away from us. I will call the police." Emma grabbed her phone and instantly started dialing. The frightened mother also showed the homeless man the action of her calling, hoping that the act alone would make him leave. Emma calling the police did make the homeless man go, but not without leaving something behind first. While Emma was calling the police in the kitchen, he snuck over to the front again. At the front of the house, the homeless man left behind one item for them to find, and it would be Emma's daughter Katie who saw it. She stayed upstairs for a while, but when she heard her mom move to the kitchen, curiosity won, and the little girl quietly descended the stairs. Katie passed the front door just at the right time, because when she did, the homeless man shoved a small piece of paper underneath it. Katie's eyes lit up as she snuck over to pick it up. The homeless man left after that because, with that note, his seed had already been planted. After reading the simple note, Katie quickly hid the paper in her back pocket so her mom wouldn't see it. Katie acted like nothing had happened, but this little piece of paper would cause a lot of trouble in no time. And all that trouble would come to pass the very next day. The next day was a Monday. It was time for Katie to go back to school again. Emma brought her daughter to class herself, and Katie would come back by school bus. Katie promised to come straight home after school was done. But when 2 hours passed without seeing Kate, Emma got worried. Emma drove to the school building and was happy to see that Katie's teacher was still in the classroom. The woman was sorting paper and cleaning up when Emma walked in. "Have you seen my daughter, Miss Wilson? She was supposed to come home 2 hours ago." Katie's teacher responded, confused. "Didn't you know that a friend of yours picked your daughter up?" Katie's teacher asked the worried mother. "Friend? What friend?" Emma replied. The confused teacher explained that a dark-colored man came by to pick up Katie, and the little girl herself said he was a friend of the family. Katie even made a big deal about it, telling everyone about him during show and tell. She told her classmates that he was a dear friend and that he was going to come by after school to pick her up. She even showed everyone a note with his address, Miss Wilson explained. Then, Katie's teacher said something even stranger. She found the man lovely, and Emma should be proud of her daughter for having a friend like that. "I even took it upon myself to bring the two of them to where he lived since he didn't have a car. What a lovely man and wonderful place." It was a pity that Emma's panicked state didn't cause her to ask proper questions about Miss Wilson's last remarks, because there was a reason why she drove Katie and their friend that day. If Emma had taken a moment to think clearly, the situation could again have been diffused, but Emma was starting to freak out. "What note? And what dark-colored man?" Panic clouded her mind a bit, but then it suddenly hit her. It must have been the homeless man from the park. He figured out where they lived, so he must have also found out where her daughter went to school. After this realization, Emma started to hyperventilate instantly. "Why did you let her go with that man? What kind of teacher are you?" Katie's teacher did her best to calm the screaming mother down. When Emma eventually managed to form calm words, she had a burning question for Miss Wilson. "Do you at least remember the address my daughter presented in class? The address that belonged to the man who picked her up?" Miss nodded as she wrote down the GPS directions. Emma wasted no time after that. She took the piece of paper with the address and jumped into her car. The frightened mother drove as fast as she could. Emma must have broken every speed limit in town to get to the destination on her GPS device, but she didn't care. She needed to save her daughter from this man. Nothing else mattered. When Emma eventually arrived at the address on her GPS, she stood in front of a large warehouse. The outside of the place didn't give her many clues. Emma only saw that the warehouse had seen better days, and people hovered around the entrance. "What is my daughter doing here?" she asked herself. Emma opened the door and was immediately greeted by multiple dirty-looking individuals. Compared to these folks, the homeless man in the park seemed very clean and well-dressed. They smelled horrible, and their clothes sported more holes than fabric. "What is this place?" Emma said out loud as she gazed inside. The warehouse was very crowded. Tons of these shady-looking people were present. They sat on floors or at the long picnic-style tables that ran all the way down the middle of the open space. But while she saw multiple individuals, her daughter was still out of sight. "Katie, where are you?" she shouted. Emma looked nervously around the sea of people who all walked past her like she wasn't even there. But then she suddenly got tapped on the shoulder by the only person who seemed decently dressed compared to everyone else inside. "Can I help you?" a kind-looking middle-aged woman asked. Emma explained her situation. She said that a homeless person took her daughter from school without her permission. This statement would soon be debunked because the dark-colored man from the park did not take her at all. The truth was much more friendly, but Emma didn't know it yet. "And apparently he took her to this place," Emma said. The well-dressed woman started to laugh, immediately removing the serious note out of Emma's dire state. "Took her? I don't think so." "Ha! What is your daughter's name?" the woman said, while already looking like she knew the answer. Emma stated that her daughter's name was Kate, and the woman nodded in response. She said she knew that name very well, as did many people who live here. The woman explained that she knew exactly where Kate was and promised to take her worried mother to her location. "She's an absolute delight. You've raised her well, and now I will bring you to her." Emma followed the well-dressed woman through the open space while she explained to Emma where they were. As you might have guessed, this is a homeless shelter, the biggest one in the city. Normally, we do not get a lot of visitors, so you can imagine how happy we were when Benjamin brought a friend. The woman said she worked at the shelter and explained that Benjamin was the dark-colored man Emma was referring to. The two women arrived in the back corner of the shelter. There were a couple of smaller picnic tables there, and at it sat Benjamin with her daughter and some other homeless people. Emma rushed to the table when she saw her baby girl and snatched her off her seat. She was still skeptical and held firmly to her own story. A stubborn thought, but momentarily it would be her daughter Kate who shed light on the entire situation. But not before a final rant from Emma. She turned and addressed Benjamin. "How dare you come to our house uninvited and take our daughter from school? You have no right." Benjamin looked surprised while Emma made these statements. "I'm sorry, madam, I thought you knew. I did not follow you home. I was invited." Emma didn't understand. "By who?" That's when Emma's daughter, Kate, took over the conversation and explained everything. She said that she was the one who invited Benjamin to come to their home. When she gave him the sandwich in the park, she saw how happy Benjamin was, so she did not want to just give him lunch. She wrote a note for him, a note that also invited him to dine at their house. Katie showed her mom the piece of paper. It was indeed in her daughter's handwriting, scribbly and simple, but the message was clear. "Come for dinner at 221 Cornwall Street." Emma was in shock. "You invited him?" Katie nodded and explained that this was why he was at their house. But when he arrived, Emma freaked out and wouldn't listen to her daughter when she tried to explain. So instead, Benjamin left and pushed a new note underneath the door, inviting Katie and Emma for dinner instead. A dinner at the shelter. Katie knew that her mother would be too scared and judgmental to come, so she went herself. The park where Benjamin sat was close to the school, so before class, Katie accepted his proposal and asked him to pick her up after school was done. "My teacher even brought us here," Katie said, smiling. Emma couldn't believe her daughter did this all on her own. She then realized all the points where she could have seen this coming. The moment in the park when she watched her mail instead of Katie, back home when Katie tried to explain, and also the moment when Katie's teacher stood up for Benjamin. Emma felt so sorry, realizing she judged a book by its cover. Benjamin was a homeless man, but that didn't mean he was harmful or had any ill intent. She criminalized a man she did not know, and she ignored all the facts that were presented to her. "Can you forgive me?" Emma asked Benjamin. To Emma's surprise, Benjamin forgave her on the spot. He hugged the mother, who was sorry for her actions, and they had dinner together. There, a new friendship was forged. Emma and Katie even started volunteering after that day, learning a valuable life lesson: always judge on character, not appearance.